Maybe I'll make a quick introduction of myself and what I'm going to talk about, because I already got questions about what is a captain commander, and I'm not a pilot. To make things clear, maybe maybe I even like planes more than fire trucks, but I'm not a pilot. No, it's a degree, a military degree in Belgium, and fire service is from the history is military based and in Belgium, so we kept the degrees that you got in the military too. So I'm in Antwerp Fire Service. I'm an area manager. This means I'm the commander of the fire service in the city of Antwerp. We also have a commander for the harbor and for the surroundings of Antwerp, and then you got one commander for the complete service. So I'm like a second or third in command, something like that. Area manager is in the UK also a very known level. I'm also, as a part-time job, maybe head of communications department of the fire service, and that's why I'm very interested in crisis communication and in social media. I'm already a social media user since the first moment I used ICQ about 15 years ago. That was for me the first social media. I always kept on using all kinds of tools online for my studies, for my work. I always had big advantages of using all kinds of computer things. And now I'm a very active Twitter user. You can find me on Twitter too. The Antwerp Fire Service, for the ones who don't know Antwerp, it's a shame if you don't know Antwerp, because it's a very beautiful city. It's much more beautiful than Brussels, if I may say so. No, Antwerp is a mid-sized European city. People who are really from Antwerp, I'm not really from Antwerp, they tend to think that it's the biggest and most important city in the Europe, but
it is.
It is, okay. But it's not. It's a mid-sized European city. But it is an important city because we have the second largest European port in Antwerp, second to Rotterdam. We have one of the biggest chemical clusters in the world. That's important because it's very important for our operational services. High complexity. As a fire officer, you have to be very highly trained. Firemen also, we have the best education in Belgium because we have these high risks. So that's kind of the context we're working in. It's a fire service with about 850 people, 750 operational members, and the rest is staff, logistics, and so on. My interests in social media are broad. I'm working on crisis communication. I helped to write some protocols and advices in Belgium for crisis communication officers. But the last period, I'm really working on getting operational information out of social media. That's for me, that's very interesting. I saw a lot of cases where there's very interesting information in social media and crisis managers didn't get it out. I'm going to give some examples later on. And we also got some examples where we got very useful operational information from social media, where we even steered our interventions, made decisions based on the information from social media. I inserted this slide, but in the last presentations there were so many examples of good information out of social media. I just found this one in a blog from Patrick Meyer about the relations between tweets about the price of rice and the food price inflation in parts of the world. It's so interesting to see that you get really good information out of social media. You can really predict things, and I thought it was a very good comparison with the fluid they use in X-rays to contrast. I have a medical, very far past. I have some medical background, so it's true. You can really see things about society in social media. So now, maybe in contrast with a lot of presentations that I heard the last days, in the fire service we are working in the super real-time situation. We like to use post-hoc information. It's good for our operational response in the future, but for us as operational service, it's very important to get real-time and super real-time information. We are working in the region, very fast onset, but also very fast termination. Most fires don't last for an hour. Then we get them under control. If they last for longer than an hour, then we have a problem. Most crises we have to deal with, industrial crises and so on, are things that are finished within 24 hours, but they start now. And they're already busy the moment we get called. So we're working in a super real-time situation. We need the information now, and we actually needed it a couple of minutes ago to make good decisions. So the faster we get information from everywhere, and social media is one of the channels we use to get information out of, the better. So this is the context we're working in. If you're working with, for example, weather reports or weather situations, you get much more predictions. We don't have predictions. So that's an important one. We're, of course, also working on floodings and so on. That's something we have more time to prepare, but I'm now going to talk about the really critical crisis situations, the ones that are happening right now. The advantage of our type of crises is that mostly they don't have a long humanitarian aftermath. So in the worst case, we get a couple of people killed or injured by the fire. That's very bad. That's a problem. We want to avoid it, but it's not like in our type of crisis you have months of rebuilding society, and that's an advantage. So do we miss important information by not looking at social media? I'm going to tell you, yes, we miss a lot of important information. I'm going to use some cases. I don't want to criticize anybody. It's just objective that we have missed a lot of information in the past. For example, this is a Love Parade case, Duisburg, where you had a techno festival with 1.5 million visitors, and panic broke out. You had crowd turbulence. It's a very specific type of crowd problem. It's like turbulence. Everybody knows turbulence in the air. You get the same in a crowd. It's like pressure waves going through the crowd, and at a certain point this wave crashes into a wall, and you get a lot of pressure there, and this is with people, so the people get crushed and die. This is what happened there. So in 2010, 21 people died, more than 500 people got injured, and this is something that happens now. So you get a crisis now, and you have to get the people that are injured out within a matter of hours, and you have to create a lot of sense making as an emergency manager within a very short time. About 3 minutes after the accident happened, the first movie on YouTube was available. This is important because the crisis management team in Germany, and Germany has a image of being very gründlich and very well prepared, and they were, but they didn't have an image, they didn't have a good awareness of what was happening. They were thinking people were climbing up to fences because they didn't get in fast enough, and they were avoiding security and so on. They climb up fences, they fell off, and they fell on other people. And this caused them to make decisions that were not good for the injured people. They didn't have good awareness of the amount of people that were injured, the amount of people that died in this situation. And if they would have looked at social media, at YouTube, if they would have monitored YouTube, they would have had a very good situation awareness a couple of minutes after the incident, and probably they would have taken decisions, very difficult to prove, that would have saved lives. So this is, for me, this was the first case where I saw, okay, using social media can give you operational information that you can use to make decisions now. Social media, for me, changes the velocity of the information flow. This also changes our need for information. The first YouTube video, like I said, was viewable after a couple of minutes after the incident and showed a lot about what was happening. So we need to do proper management and proper monitoring of social media during a crisis. And in case of an event, a large-scale event, even before the crisis, you have to be constantly active on social media. The good thing, since the Pukkelpop incident in Belgium, that was a storm came over a festival, we had 5 people killed and 400 people injured. Since that moment, every festival in Europe is monitoring social media and using social media. So we learned from incidents. There are other examples where good information from social media could have been used by emergency services, like the plane crash in the Hudson. Minutes after the crash, YouTube videos, Twitter messages were available. People were tweeting about the thing that they were in a ferry and helping people. At that moment, New York Fire Department didn't use social media. Now they do. You all saw at the Sandy case that they do right now. It's in Dutch, but it's about Haiti, the earthquake in Haiti. If you see the difference between the first messages on Twitter and the first television report, so the first messages on Twitter and first television report, you could see that Twitter could have given you a lot of situation awareness very early on and hours before the first television report. So if you get this information and you're part of UN and you see this, and then you can make decisions, you can make preparations, you go in very much faster than if you wait until the first television reports start to flow in. So that's important information. We've got another case. It's a train accident in Belgium. It happened at 8:28 in the morning, and at 8:30 the first Twitter message, 8:33 the first picture on Twitter. So that's the first picture on Twitter is online before the first fire truck is on scene. This is important because if I'm in the dispatching room of the fire service and I've got Twitter and I know how to use it, then I can give operational information to my officer who's going to the incident, and he can already, for example, start up a medical emergency plan, and ambulances are there much faster than they are now. It's all a matter of time. A couple of minutes can make a huge difference in these cases. If we get 10 ambulances at scene within 5 minutes or within 15 minutes, that's a huge difference for the survival chances of a lot of people. Almost all the pictures from the newspapers in this case, the first hours after the incident, even the first day, came from Twitter. So they just contacted people and asked, can I use your picture for my newspaper? This information was not used by emergency services, certainly not in the first moment. The Pukkelpop incident, I talked to you about it, 2011, very heavy storm over a festival area. It was a very specific kind of storm, very locally, but very heavy storm. It's an area of 60 meters wide. There was the damage, not outside of the 60 meters. And this 60 meters just went over the festival area. How many bad luck can you have? This is 4 days in a year, this festival. It was just started. I was going to visit it, make an observation the day after. I didn't went there, of course.
There's another film the day after.
Excuse me?
There's another film the day after.
Yeah, the day after, it's true. And so also in this case, operational information was not used. There were a lot of good things happening on social media during the Pukkelpop incident, like people helping each other and people spreading information about lost people and so on. So there was good use of social media, but it wasn't used by emergency services. Next one, a case of a fire in Brussels. Yesterday, while we were going to eat, if we would have gone right in a certain street, we would have passed it. It's the H&M clothing shop in Brussels. You know Brussels, 1 million inhabitants, so if you have this kind of fire in the center of Brussels, then of course you get a lot of tweets and pictures about it. If I see this information as a fire officer, then I know, okay, I'm going to send in a couple of extra trucks. I'm going to send a couple of extra towers and ladders and so on. But also, it was good to see that you could, by plotting the geotag tweets on a map and comparing it, you have to do it manually, but seeing, okay, in what tweets can I still see the smoke cloud, you could determine a certain circle around Brussels where you could see the smoke cloud. It's not so easy. That's something you have to do manually and you have to click a lot, but you could get an image of where do people still see the smoke and where does it stop. This means you can aim your communication to the people who see the smoke, and you can say, okay, we're going to try to reach those persons in the first place. But also, if I see this smoke cloud above Brussels, I know, okay, I'm going to have to do something. I'm going to have to upscale the fire service. I'm going to have to upscale the police force. I'm going to have to do a lot of things, maybe alert the crisis center. That's something we do, Peter. So you could get a lot of information out. It was not used. And this is a couple of months ago. So you see that there's a lot of information in social media that we can use as a fire service. I'm going to give good examples too later on. But first, I want to talk to you about some reasons I think that are important for the velocity of this information. First of all, it's the information gap. I don't know if everybody knows this kind of slide. So you've got a certain information availability for the public. You've got a certain information demand for the public. And they don't match, of course. In the beginning of a crisis, you get a lot of information demand. You get not so much information availability, and then you get a gap between those. And the information gap is filled in by the media by interviewing bystanders and by imagining some things, and we have to deal with this gap as communication, as crisis communicators. What I see in social media is that the gap becomes bigger. Why? Because people ask for information much sooner and they want more information. So we have to deal with this. This is something that affects us. You also get a strong effect during crises, and research has been conducted to it. Normally in social media, you get a lot of spread online, and people retweet and share, and everybody who is online, if you get some virality in your message, everybody who's online gets involved. A lot of people get involved. But this is the dream of a crisis. Is actually the dream of a good marketeer. You get a lot of effect offline. We saw this in Pukkelpop, for example, that people who had the opportunity to go online and follow Twitter, they gave the information to the bystanders and to other people in their community, and they just said, okay, something is happening in Pukkelpop. And then somebody else said, okay, but my son is in Pukkelpop, and then they would ask information on Twitter or Facebook about this person. And so the information went from online to offline and spread it offline and online in all the directions. And this is something you see very strongly in a crisis. And I can imagine Coca-Cola and Procter & Gamble and so on, they dream about this. If they can reach this effect in a marketing campaign, they are very happy. We get this automatically in a crisis. People just share the information online, offline, and in all directions. And this is an important one. I have to renew the slide because we have more recent information. But this is a spread of tablets and smartphones in Belgium. And this is about 2011, I believe, and going from 2011 to 2012, so quarter 4 and quarter 1, 2012, and this is quarter 4 from 2011. I'm going to show it for the camera. This is 2011, 2012. And you see that the spread of tablets and of smartphones, it's just rising enormously. And every new year, a lot of people get a smartphone for their present. And you see that you get a leap in the spread of smartphones. And nowadays, I think it's much bigger. But this means that everywhere, all the time, there are people who can use a smartphone or tablet to go online and take pictures, post those pictures, post information about your incident. This is a good thing, but also in communication terms, this is a bad thing because you have to deal with this. But as operational officer, this is good because you get a lot of information. And somebody already talked about using people as a sensor. This is just an increase of our sensors. Just on the street, we get a lot of sensors. So how do we deal with this new velocity of information? I think we have to make social media part of our crisis management strategy. For me, and maybe that's a controversial point of view, but information is the most important thing. Communication is a byproduct. I know this is a strong statement. It's not completely true, but first priority for us as emergency management is to get good information out of social media. And while doing this, we maybe can do good communication on social media. But we have to make sure, and it's very important, that the information you get out of social media as a communication specialist, you make sure the crews on scene get this information, or the commanding officers get this information, because this is information they don't have at that moment. And that's a higher priority than communicating at that moment. Certainly in these kind of crises. So monitor social media from the first minute of the incident and use the information. So, good cases. Chemiepak is a fire in the Netherlands. Very well known, I guess. Very heavy smoke, very large social media activity. About 100,000 tweets in the first hours. Nice thing to see is about 1% of these tweets is geolocated, and this is good information. 1% in 2011, another case showed 1.5% in 2012. I don't know what is the amount. If you put semantic information above it, maybe you can reach 5%. And I think with future developments like Google Glasses and so on, we get a lot more geotagged information. People will now are a little bit hesitant to use geotagged information, but I think the developments that I'm seeing over the world might improve the number of geotagged messages. And if you put those geotags on a map, then you get this. You get you just get certain points, and if you look there, then you see, okay, this is a high density of tweets, a very high density of tweets, and this was the smoke cloud calculation. So if you're talking about the RX contrast medium, this is a contrast medium. This doesn't mean we have to stop all and exterminate the work of hazmat specialists and measuring teams and so on. No, this just gives a very good indication. If you get a high density of tweets the other way around, and the smoke goes that way, then you have to ask yourself, okay, what is wrong? Why are people in this area are tweeting so much? So this is very good information. This gives a very good indication. So you could see the smoke cloud through the Twitter messages. So what information can social media offer us? You get a lot of information. You get human intelligence, wisdom of the crowd, eyewitness reports, opinions. You get these in the first minutes after an incident. Geospatial intelligence, imagery intelligence, like visual information, pictures, and so on. You can all use it. Big data, but we talked about it very much the last 2 days. The number of tweets a day is just expanding very highly. So this is good for us in this case. And I think what we have to do, and Patrick Meyer wrote a blog about it a couple of days ago, and I inserted it in my presentation because I really believe in it. We have to take a look at the CIA, at the FBI, at the techniques they use to gather information, to get information out of open source sources. We have to take a look what they do with the information. I just copied it from the FBI website, triangulate information. Sorry, I copied it from the blog. This is what we can do to verify the information, but it all comes from intelligence services. So maybe you have to sit together with people in intelligence services and just talk with them about how are you dealing with this information, because they're doing it right now. We can learn from them. Hopefully they give us the information. They don't have to tell us where the next Bin Laden is, for example, but they can tell us some techniques they're using to get the most out of this information that is available. I think there's a lot of future into information forensics. Some people talk to me about, okay, but is this information valid? Can you trust it? And to make comparison, to make a relative statement about this, I found this table about the number of hoax calls to the 112 centers. And then you see that you get also a lot of false and hoax calls to the 112 centers, to the emergency dispatching, even up to 50% in some countries. In Greece, it's 99%. I don't know what's happening there, but that's a bit strange. But you see that in the Netherlands, 50% of mobile calls to emergency dispatching are false or hoax calls. Oh, sorry. Okay. So if we say, okay, a lot of the information on social media is hoax or is false, this is the same with the calls we get in our dispatching center. So we have to deal with it. We have to find ways to verify the information, to get the important things out. And this is the same our dispatchers do nowadays in the 999, 911, 112 centrals. They do the same every day. So it's not so special. I give you a very concrete case from Antwerp, where we implemented this knowledge, and where we had a fire in October 2012, very recent. This is what we saw at the moment we got the call. So you see in the city, we have a quite low city. There are not so many high-rise buildings, so you can see a lot. And you saw in the city a large smoke cloud. That's the first thing we saw. And then from different point of views, we saw that the smoke stayed very low. This was the first thing we saw. You had a very low level of temperature inversion. This means smoke goes up, and at a certain point it reaches a ceiling. And I'm not going to talk too much about it because specialists know so much more about it. But then the smoke stays at this level. And when this level is low, then the smoke stays very low. For example, in this case, if this level is at an altitude of 100 meters and the smoke cloud is 200 meters thick, then you get smoke on the ground. This was what was happening there. So before the crews arrived on scene, we had this imagery information. We just received direct tweets, either from my account, because I'm tweeting very much, but also at the account on the account of the fire service. And for the people who don't speak Dutch, these are just saying that there's a large fire, that there's smoke in the streets of a certain neighborhood. There was a part of Antwerp, 50,000 inhabitants, approximately, a very densely inhabited place where there was smoke in almost all the streets. So a lot of people were seeing this and were dealing with this. The last tweet says, okay, it's just blue out of smoke. You can't see very much because of the smoke. You had people telling us that there were smoldering particles falling on the street at certain locations 2 kilometers from the fire. So this was information we saw minutes before the crews arrived on scene. We were still driving to the incident. And we got a lot of visual information. I showed you other things before. We got this information. This is important. You see the highway around Antwerp. It's one of the busiest roads in Belgium. It's also one of the most dense cross points in Europe of chemical transport, hazardous goods. This is not just a highway. This is a very important highway for all of Europe. And you saw the smoke just going over this highway with the risk of cars and mainly trucks with hazardous goods colliding into each other, with the risk of people getting stuck into the smoke. That's not good, being stuck in such a smoke. With the risk of just having very heavy traffic problems. That's also a problem, because if you shut down the road at that location, you get traffic jams in the rest of Belgium. Everything is stuck if you shut it down at that place. So that was very important information, and we got it out of social media before one of the crews was on scene. Other pictures we received from in the streets, kilometers away from the incident, from close to the incident, far from the incident. So just the information flowed in. And as you can see, we weren't mentioned in those tweets, so we had to search them. We had to really actively go on Twitter and search for Antwerp, Slagtaslaan, the street where it was, Merksem, the ringway, the highway, so the name of the highway. And so we found a lot of information by just searching on some keywords that we, out of our operation experience, knew, okay, this was important, these are important keywords. That's something one can use in a tweet to tweet about this incident. But we didn't only use information from social media. This is from one of the fire stations. I just went to the roof. While I was searching on Twitter, I just went to the roof. I took a panoramic picture on my iPhone, and there you could see, okay, the smoke is going very lowly over this very densely inhabited part of Antwerp. And based on this information, the information I got out of Twitter, I just collected it very fastly. I got this picture. I went to one of the commanding officers who was still in the fire station. The other one was driving to the incident. I showed him, just very fastly showed him some pictures, and we decided, okay, we're going to upscale. We're going to, in emergency phase, we're going to call the emergency manager, we're going to call the mayor, we're going to activate some things, we're going to call the media that they actively communicate, shut your doors and windows in this region. So we made decisions before we got feedback from the crews on scene. And what we even did is I gave some of this information with this commanding officer. We printed it and he took it with him on scene. And the other officer is standing in front of the building. He was just seeing this building on fire. As a fire service, this is not a problem. We know how to put out a fire. We have a very large operational capacity. So this fire was operationally, for us, it was not a big problem. But he couldn't see the effect of the smoke going up and then falling down again. And so this means he showed the picture, and then the officer on scene said, okay, now I understand why you're upscaling and why we're doing these things. He didn't have the awareness on scene to see these things in further away from the incident. We also, of course, started to talk back, but we first gathered the information, then we started to talk back, and we just sent tweets during the incident to inform people what we were doing, give some sense making and some information and some behavioral information. So that's what I call a byproduct. We do it, it's very important. It's not an unimportant byproduct, but the first priority for us was getting the information and making some decisions based on this information. Some lessons learned from this incident. First of all, it's a problem of strategy, it's not a problem of technology. You have to organize yourself to be able to do this. Technology is really not a problem. If you know your city, if you have some imagination, you can find the right keywords to look for, and you miss some information, okay, but you get a lot of information out. That's one thing. And practical issues, it's not rocket science like I told you. It's actually very easy if you use social media every day. It's quite easy. If you don't use it, if you don't have the knowledge about social media, if you just read books about it, okay, then it's difficult. But do we have a big crew to do this? Can we do this at every moment of the day? This was in the afternoon. I was working, so I could do this, but how are we going to do this at night? We don't have an organization at this moment to do this. Do we have the tools? Do our communication officers have the right tools to do this? Do they have smartphones, tablets, wireless connections, 4G connection to get very fast internet connection? And can we get curated information to the officer on scene? Don't just overload him with information, but can we find a quick way to curate this information, get the writings out, and just get it on scene with the officer? Taking into account that not all officers have a smartphone or use it every day or believe in this system. So, and that's an important thing. If you want to do this and you want to get information out of it, you can't invest in techniques that you don't use every day. So we have a saying in Belgium that says, don't use hot what you don't use cold. So if you want to use something in a crisis situation, better use something that you use every day, and maybe tweak it a little bit and adjust it. Like, for example, if you never took a panoramic picture and you have to do it the first time in a crisis situation, then it doesn't work. You don't manage to do it at a very good way. But if we would make a small app that makes a panoramic picture, just adds a geotag and a time tag, and you push a button and it sends this panoramic picture to a predefined email group, then it might work. So, yeah, that's my social media crisis information management team at this moment. How could we improve this? and this is something I'm working on right now. We already took some steps. We could use the crowd. That's something Peter and I are going to talk about, using the crowd for this information management. And the knowledge is just not integrated in the organization. There are not enough people at this moment in our organization that know about social media enough to do this. And then I look at Manchester, and I think it's very, very good that you have 170 people that are able to do this. So this is an example for us. I will take this to my fire service, and maybe I'm already working on getting some people who get to work with social media, work with it daily, and then maybe in the future we'll be able to do this too, right? Because this is a slow learning process. Like I said, keep it simple, keep it very, 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 very simple. If you want information management, if you want operational information out of social media during crisis, even on scene, getting information out of social media, we have to use very simple tools. Tools we use in cold situations, but even more simple sometimes. If you want an officer on scene to send us pictures from the incident, you can't ask him to fill in an email address, because this is how he's working on scene. And I forgot to bring my gloves from my car, because I've got them. I was thinking on the way here I'm going to bring gloves, and I was going to ask somebody to type in an email address on his iPhone with the fireman's gloves. It's just not possible. Only the thumb is bigger than your screen, so in these gloves. So this is reality. This is how we are working on scene. So if you want this guy, this fire officer, to take a brief moment, take a picture and send it to you to get better information in your crisis room, to make him send you information, then you have to make the tools very, very simple. If you want this guy to get information out of social media for his use and make sure he works with you on this gathering of information, then you have to make it so simple as possible. And that's a call for all people who are working on technical solutions, all researchers. Don't try to put all the gizmos and the gadgets in your systems. Try to make it as simple as possible. Rather make two systems, one that can do this and the other that can do that, but make it as simple as possible. Then we will use it. Otherwise we won't. And make sure that the things we are seeing are things we know. I talked to you yesterday about if you make a website and you want people to put geo information on it, make sure it looks like Google Maps. Everybody knows Google Maps. If it looks like Google Maps, the chances are people are going to use it. If you use a completely different system, something new, then you have a learning curve that people have to follow, and you lose a lot of information. Some conclusions for me: social media is present, big and growing. I don't have to convince you. Sometimes I have to convince people, but I think we're past this situation, and I can see in Belgium too we're really at a turning point where it's inevitable, where you can't go back, where you have to do this. Like in Manchester, there's just no way back at this moment. Social media is changing the velocity of our crisis communication and the information flow, so we have to react faster, we have to react. It will be very difficult in the future to say, I didn't know it when it was, for example, 15 minutes after the incident on an Instagram picture, on Facebook or on Twitter. It will be very difficult. You will be held account for it. Not maybe next year, but in a couple of years, people won't accept the fact that you don't monitor social media. And we just have to deal with it for monitoring and for communication. So, are there any questions? My contact data is right there, so.
All right, thank you very much.